Hello, and welcome to the TMG Fireside Chat. The premise of the TMG Fireside Chat is to bring leaders across the fire protection and life safety industry together and talk about industry-wide challenges and highlight solutions that will help to solidify the industry's foundation while preparing for growth through new technologies and strategies. In this episode, I introduced you to the folks at FireM while we were at NFPA in Las Vegas in June of 2023. During our conversation with both Scott MacRitchie and Brad Wilcox, we hit on several topics around the FireM product line, where it fits in the fire protection life safety space, and how it could benefit contractors in improving how they deliver services to their end user owners. We follow up on the TMG blog from May of 23, where we did a deeper dive into the product. We discussed the background and benefits of the product and how it gives the user universal access to fire alarm panels. And we also get a better understanding of how the product can be applied to multiple OEM panels on several types of facilities, allowing for the centralization of data collection and system performance. We also identify opportunities for fire protection contractors to facilitate inspections more efficiently. So sit back, relax, and we hope you enjoy the chat.
Hello, and welcome to the TMG Fireside Chat.
I know we're that popular.
Coming to you from the NFPA Conference and Expo in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm not sure what anniversary this is. Do we know? We don't know. I think
Not sure.
NFPA is not even keeping track of that. Who knows? This episode, we are following up on our conversation that we've had with Scott MacRitchie and the FireM folks over the last couple of months. If you remember back in, I think it was May? Yes, it was May. We dropped a blog post about FireM. And if you remember, met with the FireM team. We actually became aware of the FireM product at NFPA in Boston last year. And it was the
Thanks
talk.
for the first free plug, by the way. That was great.
You're welcome. It was the benefits of being connected with Drew Slocum and the Fire Protection Podcast and trying to find new product and innovative ways to deal with some of the challenges we have in our industry.
Yep.
So with me today, I've got Scott MacRitchie. You get to see him live and in person and not necessarily on print. But before we get into the product real quick, Scott, just real quick highlights. You know how long you've been in fire protection and how about your path through the industry?
Yeah, path about 12 years now.
Okay.
Started off at a contractor in upstate New York, Davis Summer Sprinkler Company.
Yeah.
Quickly moved out of that role into a regional role for Fire Trace International and finished with them in 2022. Came to FireM and LVX Global in April 22.
All right, so just past your 1 year anniversary as well.
Just past the 1 year,
Yeah.
exactly.
Cool, very cool. I think it's interesting. I always ask that question because as we talk to anybody in our space, it's always very interesting to see how what door opened in fire protection, and then how that journey took you from one to the next to the next.
Yeah, the doors are funny. And I just talked to Drew last week about this, and we had a whole section about how you find yourself in fire protection. To say I was 11, 12 years old thinking I'm going to be a fire protection technology rep, it wasn't the case, but happy I'm here and have a lot of fond memories and a lot of exciting pieces of the future that we're looking forward to bring to the market. This is why we're at NFPA.
Exactly. That's great. So one of the things we talked about in the blog, specific to the FireM product, was the benefits it brings to the customer base.
Yep.
Can you refresh the listener with regard to just some of the high level benefits about the product and the types of conversations you're having with both distributors as well as end user customers?
Sure. We'll start with end users. So one of the big benefits that FireM brings to the market is having a universal access to the panels. Okay. So as of right now, there are a lot of OEMs that have their own version of fire data management, right? So with us, we look at each panel in a distributor's portfolio and say, okay, it's not likely you're just going to look at one OEM's panel in the field. You're going to service, inspect, and install a bunch of different brands based on that customer demand. So if you have an end user that has multiple brands of panels and a big portfolio, it's like a property management group, it's unlikely they're going to have one login for all this version of panel or all this. It's going to be all over the place based on the different versions. And so what we do is we can bring that all into a single pane of glass, one login for every stakeholder within that whether it's a property management group, whether it's a large service provider, distributor, service provider, fire protection contractor, we can bring all that into one place so that there isn't that bouncing around from spot to spot to get data, to get information. And if you're doing an inspection, if you're doing a commissioning, all those different little pieces, all that data that comes out of that panel, it's housed, you can download it, you can aggregate it, and a bunch of insights come out of that. So in the event that you had to prove something or verify that something happened, we can do that. We get all that information as it comes out of that panel.
Okay. That's great. So, very beneficial for the end user, obviously.
Yep.
Very familiar with how that works.
Yep.
Your distributors that bring that product to market, what about their
Yep.
relationship and where they fit in the whole process?
Yeah. So they fit in the process where, again, they're not just going to sell one brand. They're going to be all over the place. So if they get an opportunity to work with a new campus or a new customer and they come in and we've got 10, 11 different brands in here, but the end user says to that distributor, we'd really like to see it all in one place. Right. And we'd really like to see, have you tested 100% of those devices? Those are two really nice words for us, or phrases, because what we can do is pull all that device inventory into our platform. We can take all those different brands of panels, set up profiles specific to that end user for that distributor. So if they have something that happens overnight and they need to dispatch someone to get out on that site, not only will they have all the inventory, they'll have the building floor plans that they can actually go in and access and see the location of the problem. We're talking troubles, we're talking supervisories, and of course, alarms.
Sure.
So with all that information, our partners are using it to not only expand their line card with their existing base, they're going after new customers. They're going after customers that they didn't have before or didn't have access to before.
Right.
So we're empowering their scalability with the FireM platform.
Right. And I think, obviously you made a reference to working for a contractor in the past.
Yep.
I've worked for a contractor in the past.
Yep.
And, it's always a challenge about growing the business. Like, where is that next pathway?
Every sales meeting. How do we grow? What do we do? What's the next step?
How do we do more service?
Yeah.
Right? How do we add more value to the customer?
Exactly.
So, and we've talked about that in the blog as well. But I see your product really fit a nice niche, specific to one, the end user, the information they need. Two, the role of a distributor contractor and the role they play. And you made a reference to truly a partnership.
Yes.
Between contractor and end user.
Yep.
But I also think it creates an environment, which I endorse, is disrupting the traditional market from some of the other OEMs.
Yep.
We'll leave them nameless to protect the innocent. But in that context, it does create a new path, a new way of doing business. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, no, I like the question. Talked to Drew about this last week as well. Right. We're calling ourselves co-competitors because here's the cool part about the new realm of fire protection and software is, we've got a lot of partnerships we're displaying today. Not just distributors, not just resellers. Companies that have come in and helped us do things like enhanced mapping, BMS platforms, platforms that sit above the BMS. We can't do all these things on our own, and we're good at our part, right? We want to do what we're good at, bring in the people that are good at their piece of it, and create an ecosystem that ultimately gives information to customers, helps distributors get more efficient, and improves the safety and compliance of all these systems.
Yeah. That's great. And it does take a team.
It does. It does. And we're not good at everything. Absolutely. One of the cool parts about being an NFPA is, part of this is Brad, our product manager, is going to come on. I have no interest in looking inside one of these FireM units and going through every piece of the board because I don't know what it all does. But thankfully, someone like Brad, who you'll hear from next, does. That on the same side. I like the blog posts, the demos, all the sales and marketing things that come along with my piece of it. So, it's divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. No, and especially when you're taking on 800-pound gorillas and brands that have been in the marketplace for 60 years, 70 years.
Yeah,
years,
they're hanging above us in very large commission banners. So
yes, they are.
Not that ours isn't beautiful and our wonderful gray, black, and yellow.
It's all about branding, man. It's all about branding.
Yes, sir.
So now that Scott MacRitchie has exited stage right, the opportunity now to talk to Brad Wilcox with FireM. So, Brad, what's your role at FireM?
I currently am the global product manager for FireM.
Okay. All right.
So basically, I'm trying to drive the hardware as much as I can.
Okay.
The movement forward, the next generation.
Okay.
I have contact points back through Australia, through our software development teams.
Okay.
And I handle the coordination with them on what we're looking for and what we want to feel like.
Sure. And how long have you been in fire protection?
Almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years.
It's my 30th year right now. We're finishing up.
Scout's 12, I'm 17. So combined, you still got a speed. So thank you.
Ironically, I want to say it, I started in this industry in Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
Yeah, the company I work for no longer exists.
Okay.
But my last one was a company called Great Lakes Building Systems.
Yep, familiar with them. So, all right, so let's get right back in the product. One of the things that Scott was, kind of leery about was touching the panel itself because he realized he was getting over his skis. So let's talk about the product.
Okay.
You talk to a lot of end users. I'm sure you're talking to specified engineers. You're talking to, a lot of electrical or engineering type people. What are they saying about your product and the benefits it brings to them from a technical perspective?
From a technical perspective, they're seeing that they're seeing data they can work with.
Yeah.
That's the biggest challenge. Whatever you get from a central monitoring station is just the standard report. You may be able to get something a little better depending on who you're monitoring, who your company is, but we're generating it immediately. Uh-huh. There's no time lag. We are 15 seconds and under, and it's in your handheld. It's if you're at your desk, it's at your desk.
Right.
So if you want to pull data, and just run with it, you can run with it.
Right.
So it's really from the end user perspective, that's where it is. The engineering community sees it. In my conversations with them, is that if we can put this in, or if we can give them a version that they could take with them, then while they're doing an acceptance test, they get to see the data at the same time the contractors, and they're not relying on them anymore to give them information. And when they do a comparative, they can find out if they actually captured everything or not.
Sure.
Which is huge. Now we're no longer relying, and having been a consulting engineer in the engineering side for 7 years, that was one of the things that was always a challenge, was getting information. When am I going to get my report? I'll get it to you. A week, 4 weeks. Now you don't have to wait. Now they can go to work, and now they can bill their clients that much quicker.
Right.
And then they can get their money and their revenue back in their building. And that's what's the other thing. It drives revenue.
Right. Yeah, one of the things we talked about with Scott was this, partnerships, right? Your contractor comes in to do the work on behalf of the, end user, building owner, person paying the invoice, right? It has to be a partnership. What are we hiding from? I mean, it's shared information.
There is nothing hide. You can no longer hide.
No.
You can. Without this, you can hide.
Yes.
With this, you can't.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so let's talk about the product. We got a panel over here. So, what's the, pretty basic looking panel. But what's the secret sauce behind it? Without getting too far over to, outside of the non-disclosure.
There's nothing. It's this way. We've had people crack the shell. They know what it looks like.
Yeah.
We're using a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
Okay, which is designed originally as for educational use to teach children to code.
Yeah.
Ironically, we're not using it today, but I've got keyboards and other things that we use for conferences to enforce the fact that you can use basic technology to get high-end information, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to develop it.
Right.
So that's the important thing. So when we open it up right now, I'm just going to pop it open.
Yep.
But we're in Australia, because that's where it started from. We can install it with a polymer enclosure.
Okay.
Yep. US.
Okay.
Because the other thing is because you can't have exposed wiring. That's every fire alarm panel in the world has. All the wiring has to be inside and fed into conduit or coupling.
Yeah.
So we stuck a box around.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the way it's going to be for now.
Okay. That works.
But yeah, and it's but we barcode it. We actually put the we don't ship it with a manual.
Okay.
It's handling in time.
Right.
So we have a QR code. Yeah. So the contractor doesn't have a copy, which I tend to send them when they immediately become a distributor for us. They can scan, their field person can scan it, and they'll have a manual in their possession on their tablet or their phone or whatever they need to do. So we try to make some efficiencies in here.
That's great.
So yeah.
That's great. So what listings does the equipment
this
have?
has an ETL from Intertech as basically a third-party auxiliary device for fire alarm systems.
Yep.
So it cannot control, but it can read data all day long.
Okay.
And that's the important thing. So
does it help the contractor or the end user with regard to compliance specific to any existing NFPA codes?
The funny thing is, I sit on NFPA 915.
Yep.
Okay, for remote inspections.
Yep.
There's a drive, certainly on the remote inspection side, to try and get electronic work done. But the thing is, we can't reliably trust a fire alarm panel on the other side. Just because you're polling it doesn't mean that that something locks up on their side. Is there somebody there to deal with it? You're going to expect the building owner to respond to an issue with a fire alarm panel. They're just going to call you anyway. So now it's just delays and delays. I see more movement towards that.
Sure.
I mean, we're not going to be able to get away with it, I think. But we've had Scott will probably lead into, but or may say, or have said in the past, we've had conversations. A lot of these contractors are still going to run with 2-person teams when they do inspections with this product. Some may go to a 1-person team because they can run it in walk tests. And walk tests are pre-programmed by panel manufacturers to cycle out after so long after no events. So no harm, no foul at that point in time.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing. And if we can make them more efficient, their revenue goes up.
Right.
It's all about what you end up in the bank at the end of the day.
Well, exactly. Right. And we're creating value for your customer, right, as a contractor, and really staying ahead of the challenges they have with regard to protecting their building, compliance, and how do we make their job easier, and how do we make our job easier?
Exactly.
Along the same way.
Exactly.
So that's great.
It's very cool.
Anything else you want? You talked 6-7 minutes about it, but what else do you?
I mean, we're working on a replacement for this.
Yep.
We knew when I started, I knew we needed more.
Yeah.
So we're going to open up additional ports. We're going to be able to pull in Modbus data directly.
Okay.
So we can take in gas detection systems and anything else that's out there.
Yeah.
We want to put it in a single platform. That's what we see in a call it an ecosystem,
right,
where we are the ecosystem, or we send the data to yours.
Yeah.
But we want to pull in. We're going to put in that. We're going to add what they call LoRaWAN or similar, long range wireless.
Yep.
Be able to pick up pressures in fire sprinkler systems. Fire extinguisher inspections can maybe go away on a monthly basis because we can monitor those things. Fire doors in New York City where they want to hire hundreds of inspectors to walk around. Why don't we just put door contacts on there and monitor it through a single system, and we have that data and we know when it's open in a jar, and now we can send somebody for maintenance instead of hiring hundreds of people. Don't get me wrong, it's nice to have people working in this country, but there's a point where it's laborious work that's just mindless.
Right. And technology can fill that gap.
And we want to fill that gap because IoT is where everything's going.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that gets me excited. Before I took this job, I had a mentor, Charlie Hall. He was great, and he's an engineer, worked for Honeywell 40 years ago.
Yep.
And he said, I've been put in charge of this group called Smart Buildings for this company. Yep. And he started talking to me about what we can do with sensors, so temperature sensors and air sensors and carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. And we start looking at it, he says, we start pulling this information in. Now we're starting to get really, really feature-rich information that we can now use it for determinants for a lot of different things.
Right. So along those lines, so a couple of points. One, the simple thing, we talked about it in the blog with Scott, was, the end user consumer at home knows when Amazon shows up and drops off a package because the date timestamps the delivery, right? You can see the delivery going down, et cetera, right? So as consumers, we have expectations that it's much more transparent with regard to that. With regard to Charlie's point and the evolution of technology, we have a labor crunch in our industry, right, with regard to skilled labor across the board, pick a trade. And when you look at the evolution of how we use that technology to get more work done with less resources, it opens a gate. And I think the third point, NFPA is 2 other codes that are in development, 950 and 951. Don't know which one or where they fall, but they're around. One is data collection, and the other one is reporting data back to the HJ. All right, and so now when you talk about the collection of all this data, think of all the components that you have the opportunity to create or that are already out there. Now we've got to find a way to standardize.
We've actually been asked already. Yep. We've had there's 2 companies that do a lot of this data collection for the fire service, and they said, "What can you send it to us?" And it's like, sure, but we have to have a conversation about protecting people's interest and building owners' interest. And he said, because we'd like to give it to the authorities having jurisdiction. It's like, and one of our partners who does our mapping, they want to give their data to the fire service for no cost. So if we can drive this all the way through at no cost, and having the building owner unfortunately pick up the cost because they're the ones that are going to pay the bill. But now we can actually put exact locations on the truck as the engine pulls up.
Absolutely.
And they don't have to go into the panel. They don't have to go to the lobby. They don't have to go find somebody that knows something. They can go do their job.
Yeah. That's great.
That's what we're seeing.
That's
That's
great.
what I want.
Yeah,
That's my desire. And we have our inventor here in the product, and he gave me his vision, and ironically, it's the same vision I had in the first place.
So it's interesting you bring that up. So I'm also on the board for NFPA, and we had a NFPA conference back in May, and one day we had a deputy fire marshal give a presentation about the relationship between contractor and agency. His name is Brian Scholl, and Brian talked about the need for strong contractors to partner with the fire service because of expectations around codes and the condition of fire systems. And then Aaron Dickens, the president of NFPA, the next day, unprovoked, not planned, reminded the contractors that we are protecting the heroes. The firefighters are showing up to a call for one reason or the other, and they are responding to the systems that we're maintaining. So the more information we give those firefighters based on the systems that we design and install and service, it creates a better environment for all of us.
It does.
That's very compelling. That's
It
very
is.
compelling.
It's what we're missing today.
Hey guys, thank you for listening and going on this journey with us. If you enjoyed what you heard, please give the TMG Fireside Chat a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And be sure to like, follow, and share TMG on all socials, as well as all podcast platforms. And finally, be sure to tell your friends across the fire protection industry about the TMZ Fireside Chat. Thank you and be safe.